She only took the job to save her mother. But every time he smiled at her, she wished it wasn't all a lie. He had a heart everyone wanted to break. But in trying to hurt him, she found herself falling for the man she was supposed to destroy. What happens when the girl sent to break his heart realizes he's the only one who can heal hers? If you believe love can bloom in the darkest moments, like and subscribe for more stories that touch your heart. Let's dive in. Maya sat on the edge of her mother's hospital bed, eyes stinging with exhaustion. Machines beeped softly around her, their rhythms a cruel reminder of how little time they had left. Bills piled up on the nightstand, unopened letters screaming overdue. The world outside kept moving, but in that small, sterile room, Maya's life felt like it had stopped. Her mother's frail hand twitched in her sleep. Maya squeezed it gently, blinking back tears. "I promise I'll find a way, Mom," she whispered hoarsely. "I won't let you go without a fight." That night, as rain lashed against the cracked apartment windows, a knock echoed through the empty kitchen. Maya opened the door to a woman dressed in a sleek black coat, eyes cold but calculating. The stranger introduced herself simply as Miss Quinn. "I know you're desperate, Miss Hart," she said calmly, her voice slicing through the thunder outside. "And I have an offer that will solve all your problems." Maya frowned, pulling her threadbare sweater tighter around her shoulders. "Who are you? What do you want?" Miss Quinn stepped forward, slipping a slim envelope onto the table. Inside was a cashier's check with more zeros than Maya had ever seen. Her breath caught in her throat. It was enough to pay for every hospital bill and then some. "All you have to do," Miss Quinn continued, eyes squinting, "is get close to Nathan Hayes and break his heart." Maya recoiled, horror and confusion warring in her chest. "Why would you want me to do that?" Miss Quinn's smile was thin and sharp. "That's none of your concern. What matters is that he's a man who's never been hurt. It's time someone taught him a lesson. And you with your pretty face and desperate circumstances are perfect for the job." Maya shook her head, voice cracking. "I'm not that kind of person." Miss Quinn raised an eyebrow, gesturing to the unpaid bills scattered across the counter. "Think about your mother. This is your only chance." Maya crumpled to the floor after Miss Quinn left, the check trembling in her hands. The thought of lying to someone, of deceiving a stranger, made her stomach churn. But the thought of losing her mother was worse, far worse. As dawn crept over the horizon, pale and cold, Maya knew what she had to do. She pressed a kiss to her mother's forehead and whispered through her ears, "Forgive me for what I'm about to do." And so began the darkest chapter of her life, one that would lead her straight into the heart of the man she was meant to destroy, and the one who would end up saving hers. A week later, Maya found herself standing in the marble lobby of Hayes Global, clutching a crispar, some with a fake name and fabricated experience. Her heart hammered so loudly she was sure the receptionist could hear it. Every surface gleamed: polished floors, towering glass walls, a chandelier like a cascade of stars overhead. Men and women in designer suits moved with cool precision, their eyes never resting on her. She felt small, invisible, and terrified. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped inside, staring at her reflection in the mirrored walls. Her hair was neatly tied back, her makeup perfect, but her eyes betrayed her fear. "Just breathe," she told herself. "You have to do this." At the top floor, a secretary led her down a long corridor lined with modern art. At the end waited a massive set of doors. They swung open soundlessly, revealing an office that looked more like a palace than a workplace, floor to ceiling. Windows framing a breathtaking city skyline. A sleek black desk, shelves filled with books and awards. Behind the desks at Nathan Hayes. He was nothing like the ruthless playboy she'd imagined. His dark hair fell slightly over his forehead. His shirt sleeves rolled up as he studied a document with quiet intensity. His eyes were sharp, almost too observant, but they held a sadness that surprised her. He looked up, and their eyes met. For a moment, Maya forgot how to breathe. His gaze was piercing, as if he could see right through the lies she wore like armor. "Miss Carter," he asked, his voice low, smooth but edged with weariness. "You're the new marketing consultant?" Maya's mouth felt dry. She forced a smile and stepped forward. "Yes, Mr. Hayes. Thank you for the opportunity." He nodded once, motioning for her to sit. "I won't pretend this will be easy. My company is in the middle of a hostile takeover attempt. I need someone who won't flinch under pressure." As he spoke, Maya caught glimpses of the man beyond the rumors, the way his jaw tight, and when he talked about betrayal. The heaviness in his eyes when he mentioned his late father. The quiet pride in his company's success. She realized then that he wasn't just a billionaire. He was a man carrying invisible scars, fighting battles no one else could see. But Maya also remembered Miss Quinn's warning, "Get close. They can trust you, then break him." She swallowed hard, hating herself for what she had to do. "I won't let you down," she said softly, even as guilt twisted in her chest. Nathan studied her for a long, silent moment, then nodded again. "I hope not, Miss Carter. Welcome to Hayes Global." As she left his office, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just crossed a line she could never uncross, and that her heart was already in more danger than she'd ever planned. The days that followed were a blur of tense meetings, endless calls, and late nights at Hayes Global. Maya threw herself into the job, trying to keep her head down, but Nathan's presence was impossible to ignore. He wasn't the cold-hearted billionaire the tabloids described. He worked harder than anyone, arriving before dawn and staying long after dark. He listened closely during presentations, his eyes focused, his brow furrowed in thought. And every so often, he cracked a dry joke that left the whole room laughing, including Maya. One evening, well past midnight, Maya stayed behind to finish a proposal. Papers were scattered across her desk, her laptop screen casting a soft glow in the empty office. The city lights outside sparkled like 1,000 tiny stars. Her head ached from exhaustion. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence. "You're still here." She looked up, startled, to see Nathan standing in the doorway. He wore no jacket, his shirt sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. He looked tired, but there was something softer in his eyes tonight. Maya forced a smile, "Just trying to finish this before tomorrow." He stepped inside, glancing over the documents. "I appreciate your dedication." He hesitated, then added more quietly, "Most people don't stay when things get hard." Maya's heart twinged. She saw something unguarded in his eyes, a flicker of loneliness, like he was remembering all the times he'd been left behind. She swallowed hard, the line between her mission and her own feelings blurring for the first time. He surprised her by asking, "Why did you take this job?" She opened her mouth, ready to repeat the rehearsed lie, but the words stuck. Instead, she admitted softly, "Because I needed a second chance." Their eyes met, the silence stretching warm and dangerous between them. Then, to her shock, he chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Me too." For a brief moment, the walls they'd both built started to crumble. They talked about late-night cravings, favorite books, childhood memories. Nathan's laughter was low and gruff, like he hadn't used it in years. Maya found herself smiling more easily than she had in months. By the time they both realized how late it was, the city outside had grown quiet. Nathan walked her to the elevator, his hand hovering near the small of her back. The doors closed with a soft chime, and Maya pressed her hand to her chest, her heart racing. She had come here to break his heart, but tonight he'd stolen a piece of hers instead. Over the next 2 weeks, Maya's world shifted in ways she couldn't control. Every morning, she woke up determined to keep her distance, to remember why she was there. But every day, Nathan made that harder. He brought her coffee when she looked tired. He asked about her opinions during meetings, listening with genuine interest. One morning, he caught her shivering outside the building and draped his own coat over her shoulders without a word. His warmth lingered long after he'd stepped away. Worse than his kindness was the way he looked at her, like she was someone worth seeing, someone worth trusting. The plan felt like a noose tightening around her neck. One evening, she caught him standing alone in the boardroom, staring out at the city. His posture was rigid, his shoulders weighed down by invisible burdens. Quietly, she stepped inside. "Rough day?" she asked softly. Nathan turned, startled. He tried to hide it, but the sadness in his eyes was impossible to miss. "You could say that," he sighed. She hesitated, then stepped closer, placing a tentative hand on his arm. "You don't always have to be strong, you know." His eyes searched hers, raw and vulnerable. "People don't stay when I'm not." Her chest ached at his words. In that moment, the man everyone called heartless looked more lost than anyone she'd ever met. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered, even though the promise terrified her. That night, as she lay awake in her tiny apartment, Maya couldn't stop replaying his words. The plan was simple: get close, earn his trust, and break him. But it no more felt like a mission, it felt like a betrayal of something real and precious. She pressed her hands to her face, tears slipping through her fingers. "What am I doing?" she whispered to the empty room. Each day, the line between duty and desire grew thinner. And deep in her heart, Maya feared she was falling for the very man she'd been sent to destroy. Maya worked harder than ever, desperate to drown the guilt that gnawed at her heart. She arrived early, stayed late, and buried herself in reports. But every time Nathan smiled at her, every time his hand brushed hers, a spark flared that left her breathless and terrified. Each morning, she woke to new messages from Miss Quinn. "How close are you? Remember our deal. Time is running out." The words felt like poison seeping into her soul. One afternoon, Nathan called Maya into his office. Papers were scattered across his desk, his tie loose around his neck. He looked tired, eyes dark with worry. "Sit," he said softly, gesturing to the chair across from him. Maya's heart pounded as she sat. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration in every line of his face. "Someone is leaking confidential information," he confessed. "Our competitors know things they shouldn't." He looked at her then, eyes sharp but filled with something else: trust. "I know you're new here, but I need someone I can rely on. Will you help me find out who's behind this?" Maya's throat closed up. He didn't know she was the one feeding Miss Quinn every detail. He believed in her, and the weight of that belief crushed her. She nodded stiffly. "Of course," she whispered, forcing the words past the lump in her throat. For the next few days, she tried to pull away, fearing the truth would spill out. But Nathan wouldn't let her. He started inviting her to dinner after long meetings, sharing stories of his lonely childhood, his dreams of building a company his father would be proud of. One evening, they sat together in the empty office, city lights twinkling below. Nathan laughed at something she said, his eyes soft, his smile unguarded. Maya's breath caught. She wanted to reach across the table and trace the lines of his face, to tell him everything, but she knew it would destroy him. Instead, she excused herself, stumbling into the hallway where she leaned against the cold glass, tears sliding down her cheeks. "What have I done?" she whispered to the night. Each lie pulled her deeper into a web she couldn't escape, and every moment spent in Nathan's warmth made it harder to imagine a life without him. The company retreat was supposed to be a quick overnight trip to a quiet mountain cabin, a chance for top employees to brainstorm without distractions. Maya hadn't planned on going, but Nathan insisted. "You're part of this team now," he told her with a gentle smile that made her heart twist. They arrived as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in fiery oranges and soft purples. The cabin was rustic but warm, with a roaring fireplace that crackled invitingly. Outside, the air smelled of pine and the promise of an early snow. After dinner, the team drifted off to their rooms one by one, leaving Maya and Nathan alone by the fire. Shadows danced across his face as he leaned back, eyes reflecting the flames. "You've changed things here," he said softly, voice barely above a whisper. "You've changed me." Maya's heart pounded. She hugged her knees to her chest, afraid to move or speak. Nathan continued, eyes distant. "I've spent years building walls so no one could hurt me again. But you make me want to tear them down." His confession was raw, his voice edged with pain and hope. Tears filled Maya's eyes. "Nathan," she breathed. He turned to her, his gaze searching hers, like he was drowning, and she was the only thing keeping him afloat. Slowly he reached out, his hand trembling as it brushed a tear from her cheek. "Why does it feel like I've known you forever?" Their faces inched closer until his breath mingled with hers. The kiss was tentative at first, a question either dared to voice, then deep and into something fierce and desperate. His hands framed her face, her fingers tangled in his hair. The world outside the cabin disappeared. When they finally pulled back, breathless, Maya rested her forehead against his, tears slipping down her cheeks. She knew she was falling for him truly, completely, and the thought terrified her more than any threat from Miss Quinn. "I don't want this to end," Nathan whispered hoarsely, his voice breaking. Neither did she, but in the back of her mind, the truth loomed like a storm she was the one who could shatter in. And every stolen moment only pulled them closer to heartbreak. The morning after their night by the fire felt like a dream. Nathan brewed fresh coffee while Maya watched him from the sofa. Her heart so full it hurt. Every smile, every touch felt real, dangerously real. She almost let herself believe they could have a future. But reality came crashing down when they returned to the city. Maya stepped into the office, greeted by hushed whispers and sharp, suspicious glances. Nathan's assistant handed him a thick envelope with shaking hands. Inside were printed emails, time-stamped and damning copies of every message Maya had sent to Miss Quinn. Nathan's eyes scanned the pages, his face growing paler with each line. Silence settled over the room like a heavy fog. He looked up at Maya, betrayal blazing in his dark eyes. "What is this?" he asked, voice low and dragged. Maya stepped forward, hands trembling. "Nathan, I can explain." "Explain," he snapped, his voice rising. "You lied to me. You used me. Everything you said, everything we shared, it was all part of this plan?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "It started that way, yes," she whispered, voice breaking. "But it's not like that anymore. I never meant to hurt you. He backed away as if she'd struck him. "Save it," he said coldly. "You can leave your things with security. Don't ever come back." The pain in his eyes cut deeper than any words could. As Maya stumbled out of his office, staff members turned away, their pity and scorn like knives in her heart. The elevator ride down felt endless, her reflection a blur of tears. Outside, the world moved on as if nothing had happened. The city buzzed with life, but Maya felt hollow, like she'd lost the only person who had ever truly seen her. She sank onto a bench, pulling her coat tighter against the biting wind. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to the sky, her voice swallowed by the roar of passing cars. She had come to break Nath and Hay's heart, but the only heart left shattered was her own. The days that followed were the darkest of Maya's life. She moved like a ghost through her small apartment, her phone silent, her heart heavy with regret. Sleep came in fitful bursts filled with dreams of Nathan's eyes, the way they had once softened for her, and the way they had turned to ice. She spent her mornings at the hospital by her mother's side, reading stories aloud even though her voice cracked every few sentences. Every time the bills crossed her mind, she felt a fresh wave of shame. The money she'd taken felt tainted now, a constant reminder of her betrayal. Meanwhile, Nath unburied himself in work. He barked orders at employees, threw himself into meetings, and drove himself to exhaustion. But every night, when the penthouse fell silent, he caught himself staring at the empty side of the sofa where Maya used to sit. The ghost of her laughter haunted the halls, and memories of her touch burned more painfully than he could bear. One evening, he found himself standing outside her apartment building, staring up at her dark window. Rain soaked his hair and dripped from his chin. He clenched his fists, torn between anger and a longing he couldn't silence. How could he still want her after everything? Inside, Maya sat by the window, forehead resting against the cold glass. She thought of Nath and constantly the softness in his voice when he teased her, the warmth of his arms by the fireplace, the dreams they'd almost shared. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to the night. "I never wanted this." She knew she couldn't stay. She needed to make things right, even if it meant walking away forever. That night, she packed a small bag and gathered the last of her savings. She called Miss Quinn, voice steady despite the tears. "I'm giving you back every cent," she said. "I don't want your blood money. I won't hurt him any more." Maya stepped into the dark, empty streets with a single goal: find a way to repay her debt and free herself from the chains of betrayal, no matter what it cost her. The city's first snow fell quietly as Maya stepped out of her apartment, her breath fogging in the icy night. She clutched a small envelope filled with the last of her savings, everything she had left. Her hands trembled, but her heart felt strangely calm. This was the only way to set things right. She met Miss Quinn at a silent cafe tucked in a forgotten corner of the city. The woman looked as polished and cold as ever, sipping her coffee without a flicker of emotion. Maya slid the envelope across the table, her eyes unwavering. "I'm paying you back," she said firmly, "every penny. I won't take your money, and I won't hurt him again." Miss Quinn's eyes narrowed, her voice low and dangerous. "You're making a mistake, Miss Hart. You'll never get another chance like this." Maya stood tall, her voice shaking but clear. "I'd rather lose everything than live knowing I destroyed the only person who ever believed in me." Miss Quinn coughed, pocketing the envelope with a dismissive flick of her wrist. "Suit yourself, but don't expect a happy ending." Maya turned and walked away, snowflakes landing softly on her hair. Each step felt impossibly heavy, but with every stride a burden lifted. From her chest, she had made her choice. She had chosen to protect Nathan, even if it meant giving up her own happiness. Meanwhile, back in his penthouse, Nathan paced the empty halls, haunted by the memory of Maya's voice, her laughter, her touch. He replayed every moment they'd shared and every bitter word he'd hurled at her when he found out the truth. He sank into his office chair, his head in his hands. Had he been wrong? Was there more to her story than he wanted to see? That night, his assistant rushed in with urgent news. "Mr. Hayes, you need to see this." She handed him a file detailing how Maya had sold her possessions, drained her account, and repaid every dollar she'd been paid to betray him. Nathan's heart twisted painfully. His vision blurred with tears he couldn't blink away. She had sacrificed everything out for him. For the first time in years, hope flickered in his chest. He grabbed his coat and ran for the door, determined to find the woman who had taught him how to feel again. Snow fell in gentle, swirling flakes as Nathan's car raced through the quiet streets. His breath came in ragged gasps, his heart pounding louder than the engine. He had lost her once because of his pride. He wouldn't lose her again. He arrived at the hospital where Maya's mother was being treated. Bursting through the doors, nurses and visitors turned, startled by the tall man with eyes wild with desperation. Down the hall, he saw Maya sitting by her mother's bedside, holding her frail hand and reading softly. Nathan paused in the doorway, his chest aching at the sight. She looked tired, thinner than before, but even now there was a quiet strength in the way she cared for her mother. He stepped forward, each stride bringing him closer to the woman he couldn't stop loving. Maya looked up and froze. Her book slipped from her hands. Eyes wide and glistening. "Nathan," she whispered, her voice breaking. He dropped to his knees beside her, reaching for her hands. "I was wrong," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I was so blind, so angry. But I know the truth now. I know what you gave up for me." Tears streamed down Maya's face as he squeezed her hands. "I never wanted to hurt you," she sobbed. "I thought I could walk away, but I couldn't stop loving you." Nathan cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "Then don't walk away," he whispered hoarsely. "Stay. Let's stop pretending we don't need each other." Slowly, he leaned in, pressing his forehead against hers. "I love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life." Sobs shook her shoulders, but they turned to laughter as she wrapped her arms around him. "I love you too," she cried softly, voice muffled against his chest. Behind them, Maya's mother stirred awake for the first time in days, a soft smile touching her lips as she saw them together. In that small hospital room, surrounded by the quiet hum of machines and falling snow outside, they finally let go of their fears. For the first time, Nathan and Maya weren't enemies, or strangers pretending they were two broken souls, healing each other with a love stronger than any lie, and a hope brighter than the darkest night. Spring sunlight streamed through the hospital window weeks later, painting everything in soft gold. Maya sat on a bench outside the hospital garden, her mother resting peacefully inside, stronger every day. She felt Nathan's hand slip into hers, warm and certain. They watched children chase butterflies among blooming flowers, the world alive with new beginnings. Nathan turned to her, eyes gentle, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I never believed in second chances," he said quietly, his thumb tracing circles on her skin, "until you gave me one." Maya blinked back tears, her heart full. "I never believed love could heal the deepest wounds," she whispered, voice trembling with emotion. "But you proved it can." Nathan pulled her into his arms, holding her close as a breeze carried the sweet scent of blossoms around them. They stayed like that, to hearts that had been shattered now beating stronger together. Because love, they realized, wasn't perfect. It was messy and painful, but when it was real, it was worth every scar. And as long as they had each other, they knew they could weather any storm. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and join us for more unforgettable tales of love, redemption, and second chances. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.